Greetings and welcome to Live from Caid. Tonight's special guest is the Kingdom of Ansteorra's own Master Robin of Gilwell. And featuring a live performance by Lord Hákon hábrók and Lady Eleanor Bywater from the Kingdom of Northshield. Me, I'm your announcer, Master Bjorn of the Northern Sea. And here's your host, Master Laertes McBride.
Greetings and good evening, everyone. Hope you're doing well. Thank you for joining us again this week. We should have a really great show. They'll get the housekeeping for our Caid viewers out of the way here at the very top. As a reminder, the next Royal Court will be on Saturday, August 29th at 1 p.m. Keep an eye out in the Kingdom of Caid Facebook group for the announcement and the link to the Zoom. And also, there will be no longer any more Royal Thursdays from their Majesties. If you have any questions, feel free to go to the Kingdom Facebook page or the YouTube channel. Their Majesties in the last Royal Thursday explain why they're just folding that into the Royal Online Court. Also, one of the things that they talked about is donating memberships and helping support the society overall. Please look for an announcement from the Society Board about what they're looking for and the help they would like in that aspect. And that's all I got for now. So let's go ahead and bring in my dear friend Bjorn. I want to be here in just one moment, and here he comes. Good evening.
Good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. You know, it's hot.
Yes, it is. I've removed as much hair as I can on my body without looking indecent, and it's not helping as much as they say online. It just isn't helping.
Maybe it's not just the hair on your head you need to streamline.
Okay, never mind. I don't need to. Yeah, let's not go there. Okay.
Oh, one quick thing I forgot to mention from the president's notes from the last board meeting. Just want to point out, and thank you for your help on this, that Live from Caid was recognized with special recognition by the board for being out there and the social media aspect of what we're doing to help bring along and embrace the people that really can't get to events right now. So thank you for watching, and thank you, Bjorn, for coming along for the ride. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much for calling me on that one day when you're like, I have an idea and I think you would have a lot of fun with it, because I really have. And Laertes, honestly, I really appreciate a great deal you letting me be part of this reindeer run, because it's been a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah. And looks like we're doing it for a while. So as long as people keep watching, we're here. And speaking of doing it for a while, I understand you once again have some selections for online arts and sciences experiences.
I do. Now, before I begin with that, there's one thing I did want to say, and I wanted to thank Her Excellency, recently stepped down as Queen of the East, Comtessa Margherita. Thank you very much for being one of the first guests on our show, this very show, that received that recognition from the president of the board, from the president of the SCA and the board of directors. I really want to thank you for your direction and your guidance on the other coast, as some people in Caid in the West and Ansteorra might say. I also wanted to thank your heirs, now the Royal Majesties Tyndall and Albrecht, the consuls of the East. In particular, I wanted to congratulate Comtessa Margherita, because, of course, she stepped down. She was given her county. She was made a lady, a member of the Order of the Rose, and also because of her extreme service in these very trying times. The populace of the East requested, shouted, demanded, and she received an augmentation to her device. And having met her, I could not think of a more worthy person, for she truly was a diadem in the firmament of the eastern skies, as I have said before. And it was our honor to know her. And I'm pretty sure that she's going to continue to assist them as best she can now that she is a rose and has so much more to do. But anyway, on to our arts and sciences things. Now, one of the first things we're going to do is talk about another kingdom in our great lands here. In particular, the Mid-Realm. This Sunday, August 23rd, at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, which for those of you that are counting in Caiden is 12 noon, the Kingdom of the Mid-Realm, hosted by the Middle Kingdom's Minister of the Arts and Sciences, is going to have a virtual staged reading of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. Now, over 30 gentles are going to be getting together during that time to read this poem. If I may, one thing that is important to note about this is that Gawain and the Green Knight, written by the Gawain poet, sometimes called the Pearl poet, that individual, we believe it's the same person, and Chaucer pretty much are the two people that gave us English literature. Because it's only about 150 miles between the Kentish London dialect of Chaucer and the Cheshire dialect of the person who wrote Gawain and the Green Knight. But those two Middle English dialects, though they are somewhat different, really eventually their effects commingled and created so much of the literature that we have now. I'm sorry for going off on a tangent about it, but it really is so immense an undertaking. And so I do apologize for the aside, but I kind of get that way sometimes. So at any rate, I'm really looking forward to seeing how the Mid-Realm helps us figure out if Gawain keeps his head, or what happens in a year and a day, and what happens with a pesky scar for a kiss. So at any rate, that's going to be on Sunday, August 23rd, and it'll be noon our time, 3 p.m. on the East Coast. Now, the second side I wanted to talk about is something that is particularly important to me, and it is called the InclusiveEarlyMusic.org website. Those of us who have studied music history or European ethnomusicology, in my case, 30 years ago, or 20 years ago, or even 10 years ago, really had a, forgive me for using the term, whitewashed series of subjects over the music of pre-17th century Western civilization. And I mean that as it is, not just Europe, but Africa and the New World and the Near East, the Indian subcontinent, etc. And really what we were taught isn't just what happened. This site really is a fantastic compilation of inclusivity in music in pre-17th century culture. I'm talking the truly varied and multicultural, multi-religious, multi-ethnic peoples that created this, that also created the very rich tapestry that is medieval and Renaissance music. These are some of the, just their bibliography alone is worth the price of admission. I cannot tell you enough. It's worth a good perusal. So what I would like you to do, if those of you are interested in looking at what it was that made this music, and look at it from a perspective that you might not have seen had you taken a music history class or an intro to musicology class, or even just a music appreciation class for your one arts unit for whatever other subjects you were studying in school. I recommend this as a website that you really just it can't get enough of. I have already been playing around in the bibliography myself and looking at things, and it allows you to kind of go in there and assist with other scholars in helping to find things. If you have a little nugget of wisdom that you might want to help share, you can place that information within their bibliography, and it can be peer reviewed. It's not just going to be thrown on there like Wikipedia. It has to go through a process, but enough people can go and look at this and go, oh yes, here's an interesting thing. We can add this to our knowledge of multi-ethnicity and different aspects of music from 16th, 15th, earlier centuries. Now, I will say one other thing, because some of this information comes from areas where they didn't necessarily start to keep records at a certain point. Some of the information in the bibliography and on the website goes as far as 1750 of the Common Era. And that's just because that's when some of the best things were being published. But you can backdate, you can look at what they have, and you can kind of progress through the information and where they got it and how they got it. And there are suppositions that can be made and logical conclusions you can draw from some of these things. But at any rate, it is a fantastic resource available to us. And I wanted to thank the Facebook group of SCA Bards and Bardic Arts to bring it to my attention, so I got a chance to look at it. And I wanted to thank them very much for giving me the opportunity to promote that. I also wanted to thank Mr. Zoth from the Mid-Realm, who was one of our Bardic guests on the program about a month or so ago, who was the person that got me interested in looking at the reading of Gawain and the Green Knight this upcoming Sunday. So people, when you are here or when you see things, continue to send that information into Master Laertes or myself, so we can help share this with other people in the SCA, because these are really wonderful things that we can share while we're all hunkered down trying to get through these most unusual times. So please go to livefromcaid@gmail.com if you have suggestions for guests or Bardic, and we would very much like to get that information from you so we can share it with everyone else. So that's the Arts and Sciences Corner, and that's all from me.
The Arts and Sciences Corner is like NPR.
Kind of is. I just don't have a hyphenated last name, though. Well, Bjorn of the no, there's no. It
doesn't work.
Nah.
So who do we have as our first guest? Oh, well, before we do that, Countess Margarita. She was such a fabulous guest, and the challenges she faced from the very beginning, even just prior to her reign, if I remember correctly, if not right at the beginning of her reign, all the way through to this time, and coming on our show, and I've described her this way before. She was effervescent. That she brought this energy and lightness and joy to the conversation. And I echo the words that you said about her. And with that in mind, of being effervescent, who's our first guest?
We have with us one of the true stellar pillars of the Kingdom of Ansteorra, and that would be Master Robin of Gilwell, who will be joining us.
All righty. Well, I will put you in your corner for now, and let's welcome our guest. So as I click, and here comes Robin right now. Hello, Master Robin.
Master Laertes, good to see you.
It's good to see you. When I first started the SCA, I was in Ansteorra and your local barony, actually. So I've known you pretty much, if not my first event, it had to be pretty much right after that. So you've dealt with me for a long time.
And you stayed in anyway.
That's true. And one of the things I was looking forward to speaking with you about today, and thank you again for coming on the show, is you have had the fortunate experience to see the seed planted for Rapier in the SCA and watch it grow, not only just within Ansteorra, how it's spread across and grown, and the level of recognition during that time has changed too. So I thought this would be a great opportunity for people to hear firsthand how Rapier has really how it really kind of got a foothold and grew from that point.
The crucial thing you need to understand about Ansteorran fencing is that we aren't the first fencers in the FCA. We're the first ones who got accepted. Fencing existed in the first day of the SCA. The first tournament, the May Day tournament, included fencing. And it died out very quickly. And since then, there were people who started before we were in Eidveld, in the East, Carolingia. What Ansteorra had was Targon Moondragon. And I first met him before either of us had heard about the SCA. We both were freshmen at Rice in 1973. This is 47 years ago. And we both went to the Rice Fencing Club our freshman year. And we actually saw each other there and got to know each other. We had our first duel I mean, it was nothing like SCA rules. It was modern fencing foil. But we had a duel at the end of class our first semester, and we wore costumes, and in a very real sense, this is where SCA fencing that worked started. We kept it up. We did choreography. We did kind of stupid things on Rice campus. 2 years later, somebody told us about the SCA. And the fact is, we would do dueling, we would do choreography, in part because we joined the fencing club for something, and the fencing club didn't have what we really wanted. Now, I'm not speaking against it. It is exactly what it's supposed to be, and I'm glad I went there and I learned a lot of fencing from it. But I wanted something slightly different. And when we heard about the SCA, Chris and I went 2 different directions accidentally. I was with the Rice players. I was working on a play. I couldn't go to the event. He went to an event first, and he fell in love. I went the next week to a Borneo meeting and said, I want nothing to do with these losers. But the first event he went to actually had fencing. It was kind of off in the corner, and it was modern foil fencing using modern foil rules, and which, among other things, meant to 5 touches. And he came home saying, we can do something better than this. The SCA is the place for it. This isn't what we're doing here. So he wrote up a set of rules for what he called swashbuckling. And it used foils and epées. For those who don't know, this is a foil. There's actually a foil blade on an epée bell, which is what we used primarily for a while. And they are nothing like the modern fence. That's an epée. They are nothing like the modern weapons we use because they bend that much. But that's what we had. That was the only thing available. But he wrote rules which involved calling it like it's real, which means 1 hit ends the fight. We used daggers, but we didn't have daggers like we have today. We used rattan because, and so this is actually an 80s SCA rattan dagger with a main gauche hilt. And yes, we were hitting each other with them when we got close enough. And
I just say I've been hit by that dagger, and it hits like a truck. Just so you know, it can't.
When somebody doesn't call blows, we would stop trying to hit them with a foil because they wouldn't even notice this.
Right.
There was a fight I had to win, and the guy hadn't called 3 shots, and I tossed the foil, and I went with just this. This exact one, in fact.
Tyvar hit me in the side of the head with his rapier. I mean, his rattan mangoche hit me right behind the ear. I'm 6'6", and he dropped me like a felled ox. It was the hardest I've ever. I mean, top 3 hardest hits I've ever received on any field ever.
One of the rules is do not close with Tyvar when he's carrying a dagger. Tyvar never closes into dagger range. If you got hit by Tyvar's dagger, you got too close to him.
I admit it was my fault.
But that was what we had. Why did we have rattan daggers? There weren't any metal daggers to use then. And there's lots of pulped rattan. What you do is you hang around fighter practice until someone says, my sword's pulped. Do you want that anymore? No, it's worthless. It's pulped. Well, the fact is, the fact that it's pulped doesn't make a difference when you're just thrusting with it. So that's where we got our rattan. And we made bucklers. The bucklers we had were just pieces of wood with a handle on the back. You have to understand, this was very different from the SCA you know today. We were mostly people in our teens or young 20s. We didn't have much money. We didn't have much research. There's no internet to find things out. The kind of research it took to get a laurel back then, you can do in 20 minutes on the internet today.
But Tyvar wrote rules and started showing them to people, and people cared. Some people said, "Ooh, that looks like fun," and some people gave us sneers and insults. Now, the reason it worked, one of the reasons it worked, was that we were part of the Kingdom of Atenvelt. Now, Atenvelt stretched from Idaho to Florida. And the king went all over Atenvelt. But when I say the king went all over Atenvelt, I meant the king was always from Phoenix, which was the barony of Atenvelt. And he went all the way to northern Phoenix, and all the way to southern Phoenix, and all the way to eastern Phoenix, and all the way to western Phoenix. But we didn't see a king as often as once a year. And so the crown isn't there to say, no, you can't do that. We were pretty much inventing it as we went along. All of Ansteorra was. It wasn't Ansteorra yet. It was just Texas. Oklahoma came a little later. And Tyvar did a couple of things that made a huge difference. One of which was he'd read about the cult of Gloriana, which is to say, in England in Elizabeth's time, they're having trouble with the fact that their ruler is a woman. So what they did was they built a cult around it. The cult of the wonderful woman who we are inspired by. And it's called the cult of Gloriana. And Tyvar thought that was cool. So he decided to start a group called the Legion of Swashbucklers that was devoted to the Queen. Now, this is really easy to do. The Queen's 1,500 miles to the west. But we would swear an oath. I say we. I'm not involved yet. This is before I got involved because, as I said, I didn't want involved with these weirdos. But he started swearing an oath whenever the Queen showed up, saying, I, Tyvar Moondragon, swear upon my honor and upon my sword to defend the life of our Queen and to preserve her good name and honor. And that became what fencers did. It was never restricted to fencers. My wife swore it regularly. She wasn't a fencer. But you swore the oath to the Queen. You were devoted to the Queen. Now, where the Queen showed up, that meant some member of the Legion would stand behind the Queen while some knight was standing behind the king. And mostly the Queens ignored it. Sometimes they got to where they might expect it. But it was a cool thing for us to do. And, you know, we don't have all this structure. You know, Ansteorra was basically run by households then because household is the only structure you're allowed to make up for yourself. And the Legion was the structure we had made up for ourselves. And it turned out to be incredibly important. Far more than we could possibly have understood at the time. Now, there were a lot of people who really, really didn't want swashbuckling to happen. Swashbucklers are cowards. They want to call themselves fighters, but they don't want to be hit. Fighting with metal weapons is not safe. Now, process that a minute. The two biggest arguments against fencing were only wimps and cowards do it, and it's too dangerous. Can it really be both? It distracts people from the real SCA. There are people who aren't trying to fit in, and it'll change the SCA's culture. By the way, that last one was a valid argument, and I tried to address it as such when I got involved because, in fact, it did. But these are the things we had to deal with. Was a lot of people really didn't like fencers. The people who were least likely to like fencers were the knights who were on the lower end of fighting skill for knights, the ones who had no chance in crown turning. And fighters who could never be knights, but who wanted to look down on non-fighters. Okay, it got started. We started the Principality of Ansteorra. Tyvar became the first Principality Deputy Earl Marshal, which we call Rapier Marshal now. Now, I'm starting to get involved at this point. What we're aiming for is benign neglect. We are not trying to get people to like us. We are trying to get people to ignore us. Because that was what we could legitimately get. And we started pushing, and this is one of the things I started pushing, but Tyvar was doing it first. All right, you're a fencer. You help us run the fencing tournament. You marshal. You helped us set up the tourney. You set up the list field. Great. What'd you do for the rest of the SCA? You should become a heavy fighter. You should become a bard. You should become a herald. You should become a seneschal. You should become an arts officer. You should start doing arts. What are you doing other than fencing to convince those people that we do fit in? Because one of the things we realized was the people who don't want fencing, we may never change their minds. We want them to want us. And I became a herald primarily because it was something I needed to do for the rest of the SCA. People became seneschals. People became heavy fighters. Tyvar picked up heavy fighting because people were saying, these are people want to call themselves fighters, but are afraid to be hit. Okay, hit me. And it turned out that actually walking on that field and saying, yes, I'm a real fighter, made a difference with a lot of people. We started getting accepted by more people. In the third reign of the Principality of Ansteorra, which turned out to be the last reign, Simon and Tessa, who were the prince and princess, went up to Tyvar and said, we're thinking of actually having an order for fencers. Do you think you could write something up for it? And Tyvar reached into his pouch and handed them a piece of paper. He'd already been carrying one in case someone asked, and he didn't push for it himself. This is something Tyvar, please understand, I'm talking about Tyvar a lot because A, that's why fencing exists, and B, Tyvar passed away in the last 2 weeks. So yeah, you're going to hear a lot about him. Live with it. His motto was patience and persistence, and that's why fencing exists all over the SCA today. Because he was patient and because he was persistent. I have no idea how long he'd been carrying that piece of paper waiting for someone to ask. But he never pushed for it. He simply had it ready. So on March 10th, 1979, at the Tournament of Chivalry, they called up Tyvar and they named him the first member of the Order of Chivalry. And incidentally, the last. Because we had a real problem, which is the order said to become a new member of the order, you had to be the equal of the previous members of the order. Well, the previous members of the order are Tyvar, and no one was his equal. No one. Tyvar rode a bicycle pulling a trailer with his armor 10 miles to fighter practice on Sunday. He'd get there, he'd talk to a few people, he'd walk on the field, and he would say, who's ready? And someone would walk out and fight him. And they'd last for 5 or 10 minutes, and the person would get tired, and they'd walk away, and Tyvar would say, next! And he'd fight that person until that person got tired. And he'd fight for an hour and a half. Then he'd walk off, he'd have some Gatorade, he'd talk to people, he'd walk back on, and he'd do it again. Then he'd ride his bike home 10 miles. None of us were his equal in fighting. None of us could match his stamina. And none of us was involved in the politics of making things happen the way he was. No one was his equal. We realized later the mistake we made because the big question at the time was, how do you kill Tyvar? And we'd find something. Okay, feint to his head and go low. And we talk about, we found this works. Feint to his head and go low. And for the next 6 weeks, Tyvar would face nothing else. And pretty soon he could stop that. And then we'd say, we found, oh, that's right. Exchange a few blows, back up, and then jump right back in when he thinks you're resting. And that's all anyone would do for 6 weeks. And we systematically drilled all of his weaknesses out of him. Because he was the best, we were taking care of all of his weaknesses. Not clever. All right. That was the last reign of Ansteorra, and every principality order except one was closed. The Order of the Cavalier, and by the way, the symbol of the Order of the Cavalier was a white scarf. Tyvar took that idea from the play Cyrano de Bergerac, where it's used to indicate who an officer is. Turns out this was actually a period thing. The white scarf was used to show an officer in the army because you could appoint someone, tie a scarf around his arm, and everyone can tell he's an officer. So it really is a period symbol. That was kind of an accident. But it was the only order that was not closed, but there was only one member. In the second reign, Lloyd and Joycelyn, who, by the way, did not like fencing. Now, Lloyd was in my local area, so I'd gotten to know him. When they established the white scarf, I knew I wanted in. That was when I got serious. I'm actually in the SCA. And I said, I want to start swashbuckling here. And Lloyd said, no. He was the local knight marshal. And I said, why not? He said, we're not going to do it if we can't do it right. I told him, I've been fighting with Tyvar for years. He said, oh, didn't know that. Okay, yes, you can do it. No one else can do it without your training. Please understand, Lloyd did not like Tyvar. But Lloyd respected Tyvar. Lloyd's queen, Joycelyn, really, really didn't want fencing in the SCA. She didn't like us. She didn't like what we did. She thought we were not fitting in with the knights in shining armor theme that was what the SCA was supposed to be. Nonetheless, Lloyd and Joycelyn established 3 grant-level orders. Now, these are the first 3 grant-level orders in the SCA, as near as I've been able to tell. And one of them had been the Cavalier and became the White Scarf. The White Scarf of Ansteorra. We spent actually some time. I was a Preston's Herald at the time, so I was in discussion, trying to figure out what to call the thing because Cavalier wasn't a good name. And we finally decided just name it after the thing you wear, the white scarf. About a month after that, I got a call from Joycelyn. She started with, okay, Robin, you know how I feel about the fences. Oh, damn it. This is going to be it, isn't it? Yes, Your Majesty. She said, but they swore an oath to me and I owe them something. So I'm going to hold a tournament. Now, please understand, back then, the fencers went off and had their own little field off to the side. And after someone won, we'd take a piece of paper with the name of the winner to the herald, and it would be announced in court. But no one was watching it. It was way over there, away from the real tourney. Joycelyn said, I want you to autocrat an event for me. I want to have an event where the only fencing is the swashbuckling. I'm trying to get my heart started again when she said, and I'm going to name the winner I champion. Ansteorra Queen's Champion, which has become the biggest fencing tournament in Ansteorra, did not grow out of the Queen's love for us. It grew out of the Queen is going to grit her teeth and do right by us because we saw ourselves to her. It was the first fencing tournament in Ansteorra where the fencing was the focus of the event. Now, we've got a foothold, but we know that the fencing can be banned at any time by the king. And really, I became a white scarf in 81, and our #1 mission was don't get fencing banned this week. That's what the white scarves were trying to do. I'm telling my cadets, okay, look, yeah, you're right. It's not fair. A cadet has to do twice as well as a squire to be thought half as good. You're right. Fortunately, it's not that hard. And we tried to build an esprit out of, yeah, we have to show them we deserve it. We deserve to be here. Joycelyn had no idea that the next queen would do the same thing with Queen's Champion. The next queen did because Kenwith really would rather just follow what happened last time than have to make a decision. So she held the Queen's Champion. She didn't care that much about it. We did. But she treated us right because it was the thing the queen should do. The fourth queen was Siglinde Seer. And she loved the fences. She loved the idea that we swore an oath to her. She loved the idea that we wanted to fight for Queen's Champion. And really, Siglinde built the notion of the queen is as supportive of the fencers as the fencers are to the queen. On a personal note, I also became a white scarf that way from Siglinde's hand. But Ansteorra is starting to get to where fencers aren't sneered at, or at least not as much. There are certainly people still sneering at us. But we had decided to fit in. I had started fighting heavy. I didn't want to at the time. I did it for purely political reasons. I fell in love with it years later. But once you enter a tournament against somebody who says you just don't want to be hit, he can't say that anymore because one of two things happened. One, either he hit you, in which case he can't say you're not willing to be hit, or two, I hit him, in which case he can't claim I'm not a fighter. Slowly in Ansteorra, it's growing. The white scarf made a huge difference, in part because it is a big symbol that you can see across the field. Years later, I was the chairman of the Additional Peerage Exploratory Committee that wrote up the proposal for the Order of Defense. And having worn a white scarf for 30 years at that time, one of the things that I was clear on was I want a symbol that people will see. That's why the white collar, because you can see it. One of the problems that pelicans and laurels have, and I know this because I'm both, is, yeah, I'm wearing a pelican and laurel. This medallion has the badge of the pelican and the laurel just as much as the badge of the Order of Defense. But no one sees that. You see the collar. You see the white scarf. I do not know if Tyvar figured that out when he suggested the white scarf was a symbol. I doubt he didn't. I doubt if he did, but it was a huge difference. And in 1987, the Outlands decided they wanted to use the name White Scarf of the Outlands for fencing order. And due to a bizarre set of coincidences, I actually took that call. The only reason I took that call is I was married to the principal herald at the time, and what they needed was a heraldic letter of permission to conflict. They can't use the name White Scarf of the Outlands because we've registered the name White Scarf of Ansteorra. But they didn't want to do an ordinary letter of permission to conflict. They wanted to make it look more equal, so they wanted it to be in the form of a treaty between the two kingdoms. So the White Scarf Treaty existed at the Outlands' request so that it looked like an equal thing between two kingdoms rather than us saying, yes, you can use it. But the actual meaning of the White Scarf Treaty is you can use the name. I was actually opposed to the idea at first. I thought, hey, we've worked hard to make this symbol mean something. It's our kingdom symbol. Why don't you make your kingdom symbol? The argument that convinced me was if they want it, it's not a kingdom symbol. It's a more than kingdom symbol. So we went out to an event at the Outlands, several white scarves, the principal herald and the crown, and signed the treaty and established the second order of the White Scarfs. Nobody there thought there would ever be a third White Scarf kingdom. We thought it was just going to be between Outlands and Ansteorra. 4 years later in 91, when Trimera said they wanted the White Scarf too, it was kind of a surprise to us. After that, when all the others jumped on, that was not a surprise. But one of the things that made a huge difference to the growth of what's now rapier combat, was originally swashbuckling, was a symbol people could see and that other kingdoms noticed and cared about. I don't know if I'm wandering, if I'm actually entertaining people.
No, this is great, Robin, because there's a lot of people that just aren't aware of the history and the path that's been traveled to expand Rapier and the recognition on it. So I'm not seeing people going, get on with it in the comments. Everyone is thoroughly enjoying what's being talked about. I mean, and you're getting closer to where we are now, and you touched on the Order of Defense and the expansion of the Order of the White Scarf. Here in Caid, we were the sixth kingdom to sign on to the treaty.
Mm-hmm.
Dame Arabella was the one that kind of ran the charge with that. I happened to move into the kingdom prior to that and would sit and give her some last minute assistance. But watching that growth, watching it expand, seeing the symbol that is recognizable, really, I agree with you, is what helped grow and keep it growing.
A lot of archers have asked me, why didn't you have an order for everything, not just fencing? There are two reasons. One is the board told us to look into a rapier order. But the thing I keep telling people is archers who want a peerage need to do two things. One, they need the order of defense to succeed, because a lot of people don't realize just how revolutionary it is that there's a fourth peerage. There have been 3 peerages since 71. That's not quite 50 years. There were 5 years of SCA before the third peerage, the Pelican, was established. And it was an utter shock that this would happen. The other thing archers need more is they need to show the SCA how a multi-kingdom order for archery will serve the SCA. That's what the White Scarf did. Is it showed a symbol that was not a single kingdom symbol, that mattered. It mattered not only at Gulf War, which was between 2 White Scarf kingdoms, but it matters at Pennsic. And neither the Mid-Realm nor the East have a White Scarf. Nonetheless, the White Scarf matters there.
So now that we're kind of current where we are with the Order of Defense, Tyvar, as you've mentioned, was instrumental in growth and organization and having the vision to grow it out. I know he traveled to practically every kingdom that had Rapier to teach. He came out to an Academy of the Rapier out here with his machine and taught some classes. And I think we could all agree that he left an indelible mark in not only the Rapier community, but SCA wide, with his dedication and service over the years and
absolutely
forethought.
As a matter of fact,
I know, like you said, you knew the man for a long time.
As a matter of fact, Master Robin, I was the first Rapier Marshal for Gulf Wars. I was the Earl Marshal for Fence in Meridies for those first few Gulf Wars. And Tyvar came out and he brought the machines and taught us. So even though we did not have a White Scarf at the time, we were a very fledgling kingdom. We were a Schlager only kingdom back in the mid 90s. And as a host kingdom, we really sort of created a hodgepodge system for 2 White Scarf kingdoms to fence on our soil. And he really was instrumental. And to be fair, my great co-host Laertes, who also was coming in from Ansteorra had a lot to do with how we ran things those first few years in Lumberton, Mississippi, there at Gulf Wars. And but it all started when Tyvar agreed to come out to Meeman Shelby State Park in Memphis, Tennessee in the early 90s and bring his machine and show all of these big Southern knights just how cool, how 1 pound of pressure with a sharp rapier could do to a metal rib cage and some wet rawhide. And I think that really got their attention.
Absolutely. 2 people now have mentioned the machine. Let me describe this. It was actually originally made by Yolo and Dupre for an early Academy of the Rapier in the mid-'80s in Ansteorra. It was a scales rigged up with an embroidery hoop holding wet rawhide, so that it would measure exactly how much pressure it took before a rapier passed through the rawhide. And Yolo and Dupre thought we were calling blows too light, and wanted to show that we should be calling much heavier. In fact, they showed that we were calling too heavy and we needed to scale back. They were honest enough in their research that they brought the machine out to an Academy of the Rapier and they showed this. Tyvar then made a similar machine, which he then took around everywhere. He took to academies of the Rapier throughout the known world to show people what the blades would do. Now, the thing is, here's an FA, and by the mid-'80s, everyone was using an FA because it's a little stiffer than a foil. I can do that with no problem. And we were hitting that hard. Now, let's look at that. That's that much blade into you. That's more than you need. That's what we eventually found out. But because the blades were so unlike real rapiers, we hadn't figured it out yet until we had the machine. And Tyvar took it everywhere. He took it to the east that I know of, the mid-realm, at Aidenveld, because those were early academies of the rapier. And it was crucial in showing, A, that we're actually trying to simulate something here, and B, what level of blow calling we should actually be doing. Now, the first fencing at Gulf War was Gulf War II. Not only was there not a Moody Marshall yet, Moody still said fencing was illegal, but the Ansteorra and Trimaran crowns insisted on a fencing war point. And they declared the list field in front of the 2 queens to be an embassy, a joint embassy of Ansteorra and Trimaris, so that it wouldn't be fencing on Meridian soil. Furthermore, now this was like a 4-day event here. It wasn't a week. It was Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and the real war was Saturday. Friday afternoon, we did the Rapier War Point, which was a set of individual challenges because Trimaris didn't have anywhere close to enough people to fight us. In fact, I had moved to Trimaris for a year and a half when I was in the mid-'80s. I was actually the first white scarf in Trimaris just because I happened to be there when they became a kingdom. And therefore, I was the first Trimaran to swear the Legion oath to the Queen of Trimaris. So I went and offered my services to the Queen of Trimaris for that war point, simply because I knew I wouldn't get a chance to fight if I didn't. But we did this, and not only did Moody insist that that had to be an embassy, so it was Ansteorra and Trimaris soil, not theirs, but they held court while it was going on, so all the Meridians would be elsewhere and not see this horrible thing.
Some of us did skip court, Your Excellency.
Doesn't surprise me. At the end of it, now, a lot of people had been told, okay, we'll have fencing at this. Actually, this was Gulf War III when this happened. And it was the battle was one-on-one. They had, by Gulf War III, 4 white scarves there, 4 cadets there, and 14 other fencers. So it was a one-on-one, and the 4 White Scarves included 2 Ansteorrans who were fighting for them. We had, I think, 20 there, and more cadets and far more non-cadets. So our 4 White Scarves faced their 4 White Scarves. Our 4 cadets faced their 4 cadets. Our 14 others faced their 14 others. But the problem is their 4 White Scarves were facing our 4 best White Scarves. I think we split one of those because I was fighting for Trimaris, and Ingve and I fought to a double kill, and it was declared a victory for both by the queens. But it wasn't close, not because Trimaris wasn't on average as good as us, but because the average Trimaran cadets were facing our top 4 cadets. The average 14 other Trimarans were facing our top 14 non-cadet Trimarans. And in fact, there was a young lady from Trimaris who came up and told me she was very, very impressed with how good her opponent was. Now, she'd been fighting for 4 months. And she had an opponent, and she was really, really impressed with how good her opponent was for someone who wasn't even a cadet yet. Well, who did you fight? Lady Batista. Well, Batista was one of the probably top 10 fencers in the kingdom at the time. Fencing skill was not the reason she wasn't a White Scarf yet. But at the end of that, the Earl Marshal of Mudies came out and said, okay, you've had your war point. There is no more fencing at Gulf War. Now, over half the Ansteorrans who had come to Gulf War to fence had not yet drawn a blade, just because we had a lot more people than Trimaris did. So they came a long way to this event and were told, you can't fence at all. And I spent that Friday night going to a lot of people saying, yeah, you're right. It's not fair. It sucks. That's the rules right now. We have to live with it. We will work to try to make it better next year. I'm sorry, but we have to call this blow. But there were some Ansteorrans who decided they didn't have to call this blow. Saturday morning, there was Master Pippin walked out, and everyone's at the big field getting armor inspected because this is the real war. I mean, it's still mostly a weekend event. And he announced the duel between Earl Michael of Monmouthshire and Earl Keen McEwen with their seconds, Count William the Bear, and I forget who the 4th one was, but it was 4 royal peers of Ansteorra who had decided that this was unfair and they were going to do something about it. So they walked out, heralded. I mean, the herald was making sure he could be heard by everyone. They walked out and he announced the first fight, and they're fighting with epes. Actually, it was 2 dukes and 2 counts, I believe. And they fought, and no one tried to stop them. And then their seconds fought, and then the principals fought again, and then they did 2-on-2. They fought for about 20 minutes, and nobody came up to stop them. And they thanked the populace for watching, and they walked off the field. At that point, the king of Ansteorra, no particular fan of fencing, it was King Inman, but very much a fan of Ansteorra, walked over to the Earl Marshal Mudies and said, okay, you watched my Duke fence for 20 minutes and didn't do a thing. You can damn well let the people who came here to fence do it. And he forced him to back down, and everyone was allowed to fence. Off on the side, but we were able to do it. There were a lot of people who did a lot of things to help fencing grow. And what I find delightful these days is how many fencers and other people simply don't understand when I say, yeah, fencers will look down on at the time. And isn't that great that they just don't understand it anymore?
I think it is fantastic, sir. Indeed.
Definitely. So Robin, I think it's fascinating that sharing the stories with us. Esteban and Batista are both watching the show, so I might have
Oh,
got,
great.
I might have got some text from them. But one of the things I want to say is, you give a lot of credit, due credit, to Tyvar and everything he did in the society and the changes that he did. But you're not a slacker either. You are the 5th White Scarf in the SCA. You
Yes.
were premier of the Order of Defense in Ansteorra. You're one of the 3 premiers. You're one of the premiers to the new grant level order for armored combat, Centurions in Ansteorra. You're a landed baron, you're Pelican, you're a Laurel. I believe you were chairman for the 2010 census for the society. Is that correct?
I was on that committee. I was not chairman.
And then you were chairman for the Additional Peerage Exploratory Committee. Yeah, that was fun.
He's also the only person that I know of that has been the premier bard of Ansteorra 3 times.
Right.
Well, I had to. I was the first one to become premier bard twice, and then Finnegan did it.
Right.
So I had to go up to 3.
So I would say that through your dedication and service and such, that you too have helped guide us to where the Rapier is on the society level too. I just want to say that. One of my favorite memories, I don't like making about me, but one quick thing was when I was going along my path in Ansteorra, and we were local. We had a tournament. You beat me at the tournament. Shocking. And that very next practice, you pulled me inside and said, "You're going to fight with me all practice because you can beat me and you should have beat me. And we're going to fight until you beat me on a regular basis like I know you can." And that's one of those moments that mentally helped me go along my path and gain the self-confidence, for better or worse, some people in Caid would say, that I have that put me along the path. And I want to thank you for that too. So
the next major tournament we fought was an Elfsea Defender. You beat me in the first round, and then I beat Brendan, Esteban, Miguel, and Batista. You're the only porter who beat me that day, but I won that tournament. You're the only one who touched me.
Yeah, well, those 4 were so overrated anyway. So we're going to wrap this up right quick with what we tend to do is a quick trivia game. And we're going to jump right to it. So Bjorn, what's the name of this trivia game we're playing this week?
Let's see. As I understand it, the trivia game this week is going to be called, where did it go? Oh my gosh. It's called A Hairy Situation.
That's right. Well, as people may notice, you have a very resplendent mustache. And actually, it's on your device and on your badge too, correct?
Yeah, of course.
So one of the things we're going to do is I'm going to show you a close-up of a famous person's mustache. And I want to see if you can identify who that person is. So here, we'll do an easy one. We'll right off the bat. So if you can see that on the screen, correct?
Yes.
So who would that be?
Well, since it's not a real mustache, it's just painted on, my first guess is Groucho. That
is correct. It's Groucho Marx. So that's the game, right? It's pretty easy. So and you're a movie buff. Actually, don't you have a blog where you're going through all the Musketeer films? Isn't that correct?
That's correct. Robin Swashbuckler Reviews.
So there's a plug for you. Okay, let's do another one. This one's let's see. Who would this be?
Oh, I should recognize that. I don't think it's Ben Turpin.
No.
It's one of the early 30s or 40s mustaches, and I should recognize it, and I just don't.
It's a little more abstract than you think.
Oh, is that Salvador Dali?
That is Salvador Dali. Very nice. See?
One of the more relaxed mustaches.
Okay.
And I have no idea who.
Let's see. Who do we got this? Oh, here's a good one. Based on the topic we're just talking about, who would this be? You might have run across him on your movies you've been watching.
Is that Errol Flynn?
It is Errol Flynn. Very nicely done.
I recognize the smile, not the mustache.
Oh yes. I've recognized the dreamy eyes. Let's see. Oh, we'll go something a little more current. Do you recognize this?
No, I don't. What sense of movie was he in?
Well, you can give me your answer in the form of a question if you'd like.
Oh, that would be Alex Trebek.
That is true. It's Alex Trebek back when he had.
I fell in love with the Jeopardy when it was Art Fleming.
Yes.
In the 60s.
And then final one. This one's more for me than anything else. So, do you recognize who this is?
It's Hulk Hogan.
Oh my God! So you're a back in the day WWF fan?
I do my best.
Oh man, in college I went to a couple of the wrestling things. It was awesome. Well, that's all we have for you this evening. Again, thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing the stories. I would encourage you to go back and look at the comments that were in the Facebook feed, questions, and people appreciating you sharing and leaving a recording of this history that before you'd even have to go over to your house or go to an event to get. So I really do appreciate it, Robin. Thank you so much.
I enjoyed it. Thank you.
And Esteban just texted me to say hello. So
hello, Esteban.
All right. Well, you have a great evening. I know it's a bit late for you. Thank you very much. And hopefully we'll see each other again in person soon. Oh, and good luck this week with what you have going on. I hope it goes well.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good evening, Robin. Thank you. All righty. Let's bring back Bjorn. Hey, Bjorn. That was awesome.
I'm just going to say really quick that it wasn't me that he was talking to. He was actually talking to the Earl Marshal of Meridies when they were saying that there was no fencing to be allowed. I wasn't allowed to speak at that time. It's like, only knights talking here. So we didn't really have a lot to say for that second one. But the third one, we actually got a chance to take the field. And I remember Ansteorra kicking all of our butts resoundingly.
Well, I was one of the 14 non-scarf, and I was like, oh, he's going to say that lady said so much nice things about Laerty. Yeah, no, it was Batista. So anyway.
I want to have him, but I'm going to have him back as a Bardic guest later in our season because he's just phenomenal. So yeah. I'll beg that of him later on.
And speaking of a Bardic performance, who do we have performing this evening?
Well, we have a wonderful couple, Hákon and Eleanor, who are going to be coming in for us, and they have been waiting patiently to come in and perform for us, so we're very excited to have them with us.
All righty, well, let's put you back in timeout, and let's say hello to our guests. They'll be here in just a moment. Well, hello. Oh, I'm going to, and here we go. My first unmuting of the night that I forgot. How are you? So I see you have someone else there. I'm going to go off screen right quick.
We do. Sorry, we don't quite all fit because his shoulders are very wide. This is my mother. She's joining us for singing because why not if you can sing in 3 parts?
Yeah, so we're from Atlantia, but camping out in Northshield. And
hence the mismatch.
Yeah, sorry,
happening.
my garb's in Atlantia.
Well, I appreciate y'all joining us tonight. So how did y'all get into the performing arts and doing Bardic in the SCA? Have you been in the SCA for a while?
Well, she's been in longer than I have.
Yeah, no, I started in 2012-ish. But I've been playing whenever I'm able to based on where I'm living. So I've played in a couple different kingdoms with varying levels of activity. And I didn't start Bardic until fairly recently. I did heavy fighting and then got hit in the head a lot, and that wasn't working out so well. And found something else to fill some time. So I'm doing Bardic now. It's been really fun. Yeah, but you've been doing Bardic longer.
Yeah, so people primarily know me as an armored fighter, but I actually joined the SCA to sing. I'm really interested in early music. I've done a lot of research into it, and then we also play around with SCA traditional stuff and starting to do some more original pieces as well.
Now, since Mom sings, do y'all just sit around the house during quarantine and have a hootenanny? Break out the bars and
we have a couple less enthusiastic people also in the house, and I think they tolerate the amount of singing that's been happening, but don't love all of it. They're not super madrigals.
So, what songs are you going to perform for us this evening?
So, our hosts tonight have been gracious and allowed us to do 2 songs. The first piece we'll be doing with Tamsin here. It's Din Dir and Din, which is a 15th century Spanish song from what's called the Palace Songbook. It's a collection of 461 Spanish songs from the 15th century, and it's fairly well known. So it's kind of the traditional madrigal piece.
And then our second song is one that we actually worked on together. It's based on a portion of the Voluspa, and so it deals with Norse mythology. And Hákon was nice enough to sort of mush the words down into a reasonable length. And then I trucked a tune on it, and it tells the story of the foretelling of Ragnarok. So it goes through a seeress basically telling all the gods what she thinks the end of the world is going to look like.
Oh, so it's a happy, uplifting song. Perfect.
Yeah. We thought we'd end on a high note, just for the fun time.
Well, thank you very much for coming on the show today, and the floor is yours.
All right.
Give us a note.
Din 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 Danya din 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 Danya din 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 Je me lève en bel matin matinal t'appelle à prata encontré le ruiseñor que cantaba sola rama din 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 Danya din 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 Danya din 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 encontré le ruiseñor que cantaba sola rama. Ruiseñor, le ruiseñor, fakta merke stamba shata din 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 Danya din 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 Danya din 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 Ruiseñor, le ruiseñor, fakta merke stamba shata. Idigalo mon ami, que je ya so maritata din 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 Danya din 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 Danya din din din.
Thank you. All right, so that first song is the chorus, the din dir din, is supposed to be the church bells in the town, and the verses of the song are from a young woman sending a message to her lover by way of a nightingale that we can't meet anymore because I'm married now. All right. I'm going to sit on this one?
Nope.
Cool. All right, 1 second.
We have an instrument for this one that's very loud, so we're starting from far away with it. All right. Alone she sits and open the orb. The Lord of Gods her eye to seek. What seek you now? I summon me. You give me gems and golden rings for source, for sight and soothsaying. The fates I fathom, yet farther I see. See far and wide the world's about. Hear me, all ye hallowed beings, both high and low of Heimdall's din. You ask our Father that I set forth the fate of the world as first I saw. Garmbays loudly for near the cave, breaks his fetters and freely runs. The fates I fathom, yet farther I see. Of the mighty gods, the engulfing doom. So gather together your gods for council, the holy hosts, and hold converse. Come hold and call out all your questions, which ye know further or how.
Trembles the towering Yggdrasil, its leaves sigh loudly, the Ettin unleashed. Sails a ship with shades from hell, or the ocean stream steers it low-key. In the wake of the wolf rush witless hordes. The fates I fathom, yet farther I see. There's Rim from the east, holding his shield. Comes Surt from the south with cinder of twigs. The war god's sword like sun does shine. The tall hills totter and trolls stagger. Men fall to hell, the heavens rive. Garm bayes loudly for Nipa cave, breaks his fetters and freely runs. The fates I fathom, yet farther I see. Of the mighty gods, the engulfing doom. So gather together your gods for council, the holy hosts, and hold converse. Come then call out all your questions, wit ye no further or how. Trembles the towering Yggdrasil, brothers will battle to bloody end, and sister sons their civ betray. Axe-age, sword-age, shields asunder, Wind-age, wolf-age, Midgard falls.
The fates I fathom, yet farther I see. Will the spear of no man spare the other? Neath sea land sinks, the sun dims. Bright stars from the heavens fall. Gushing steam and gushing fire, to heaven soar the hurtling flames.
Garm bayes loudly for Nipa cave, breaks his fetters and freely runs. The fates I fathom, yet farther I see. Of the mighty gods, the engulfing doom. So gather together your gods for council, your holy hosts, and hold converse. Come then call out all your questions, wit ye no further or how.
The fates I fathom, yet farther I see. Wit ye no further or how.
Wow,
Outstanding.
that was amazing. Thank you so much.
Well, it's a pleasure to get a chance to be on your show. I've never sung in Caid before, so
Well, you've now sung across the known world.
Exactly.
Traveling in this pandemic. Thank you, Mother.
yes.
Yeah, thanks, Mom.
10 to 10 who joined us.
I just
I have
want
to
to
say, a good-sized lad who fights heavy and sings. I've never seen anything like that. That's fantastic.
Pretty. Look at this hair.
I know it's so light and bouncy. Well, hopefully we'll be able to get events started back up again. You'll be reunited with your garb, and be
Not
able
my father's Ren Fair tunic.
Well, yeah, the problem is that there are plenty of things in the house that work for medieval clothes,
right? Yeah,
but for her family.
exactly. Yeah, it's like,
in this house.
it'd be like Bjorn borrowing one of my outfits.
It would be a wonderful ascot.
But thank you both for staying up late with us. I know it's a little late there on the Central Time. I appreciate it. Thank you for sharing your talents and your passion. And I know in this time, and I've said this before, it must be super tough performing to a piece of glass that's glowing. People around a fire. So,
Well, thank you so much for having us. This was such a treat.
well,
Thank you so
again.
much.
And y'all have a great evening. Take care, and hopefully we can meet in person someday. Thank
Stay
you.
safe.
Absolutely.
Y'all have a good evening. Thank you again. And say goodbye to Mom.
Yeah.
All right, let's bring Bjorn back in. And hey, oh my gosh.
That was so much fun, wasn't it?
Oh my gosh.
No, it's really weird. It's like my mother, she came out for my elevation, and so Ellen of Ansteorra sang for a whole bunch of folks in Caid who never knew where I got it from. And it's always neat to see when the matrifamilia and patrifamilia come out, and you just see this beautiful lineage of music, because they all had fantastic voices. It was beautiful.
This was amazing, and the stories and the enlightenment provided by Master Robin.
Yes,
that was amazing. So, I think we need to wrap this up. Let me know who we have next week for the interview. We're going to be talking with the disaster relief coordinator for the Kingdom of Caid. That'd be Algetha. And she'll come in and talk about the duties and responsibilities of their job, since now the fire season in California seems to run from January through December.
So it would seem. And then, of course, Algetha also coordinates disaster relief for any number of things going on outside our borders. In particular, for me personally, she was instrumental in getting necessary relief funds and things to the fledgling kingdom of Glenavon that had just been hit by Hurricane Katrina. Right. So personally, the work that Caid did and the disaster relief people in Algetha did helped my folks tremendously. And so I'm very, very much looking forward to that particular interview.
All righty. So it sounds like we have a good week ahead. And,
we do.
Thank you again, my friend. It's great to see you, and thanks for everything you do.
Thank you very much. I just want to say that next week we'll be having with us from the Kingdom of the East, since we've been talking about the East, our bardic performer is going to be Lord Gregor von Mendenham, who will be joining us from the East. So once again, we're going to have someone deal with a 3-hour time difference. But thank you so very much for everything you do. And we're looking forward to having another wonderful performer with us from outside our borders.
All righty. Well, then once again, everyone, and Bjorn, we'll see you next week when once again we'll be live from Caid.